Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight for our third town hall on seawater desalination for the coastal Bend region. Tonight's meeting is being held virtual, and our audience is joining us in several ways. Some are watching this on the city's public access channel, which is CCTV 20. We have others watching on YouTube, and still others are watching on Facebook Live. To hear tonight's presentation completely in Spanish, this number's been provided before, but I wanted to provide it one more time in case a Spanish listener wants to transition to Spanish translation. So if you did, call 1-408-418-9388. There'll be a conference call set up, and so after you dial that number, you'll have to enter the following codes. Enter the number 146-086-5360, and then hit pound twice, pound, and then you'll be in a conference call where the meeting will be translated entirely in Spanish. So the goal of our town halls, as I mentioned, this is our third, is to provide the community with a greater awareness of the city's efforts in pursuing seawater desalination, not only for Corpus Christi, but for the region. The city is a regional water supplier, and it would serve our customers that span 7 counties and over 500,000 people. Our goal, the City Council's goal, has been water security and supply, and it's for generations to come. And so that's where we are in our water history at this point. Allow me to introduce myself to you. I'm Peter Zanoni, Corpus Christi City Manager, and I'm joined tonight by Mayor Joe McComb is here with me, and one of our utilities staff members, Kevin Norton. In fact, he's our Director of Public Utilities. In a separate room, we have 2 other staff members, Jason, who is actually working for the city on behalf of Freeze and Nichols. He is a project manager and an environmental engineer. You'll hear from him momentarily. And then Esteban Ramos is our water resource manager, and he's in the same room as Jason, and he'll be speaking to us momentarily. We're really excited to come together as a city team and provide you this venue. We know that with COVID-19, things are a little bit different. We'd be doing these in person somewhere in the community had it not been for COVID, but with this technology and the great staff that we have, the support staff that help put this together that you won't see tonight, with their efforts and your willingness to use this venue, these town halls have been pretty successful so far, and we're glad to be here again. Just as a little recap, before we progress on to a short video for you, we, the city and the region, really are at a pivotal point in our water security. The city's been in the water business for over 100 years, and points of time along the way, the city has to decide to get more water because of growth, essentially. And as our city grows, as jobs and opportunities grow for us and our children, we need more water. And really, that's what it comes down to. You'll hear a lot from us, and we'll hear a lot from you over the next hour or so. But the key thing to remember is that our water supply is reaching a point to where we know we need to get more water if we want to continue to grow as a community. And that's why we're pursuing the desalination project, the seawater desalination. Our goal, though, is to let you know about this, and we're going to have a lot of information to provide you. And then we'll also listen to your questions and answer those along the way. Water has been, for every generation, a very important element. And the city is growing, as I mentioned, and what you're going to see next is a video that demonstrates both that the seawater desalination is not the first time the city's looked for more water as we grow as a community, and but it is a critical point, and it is a point that we want to consider moving on with. So we're going to show you a 2-minute video now, and then after that video, Mayor Joe McComb will provide some comment as well. And then from that point, we'll have an explanation, a PowerPoint of sorts from our staff that'll help you better understand the project itself. So with that, we'll roll the video.
Potential. From Alvarez de Pineda to Colonel Kenny, this city knows how to maximize potential. It was once the potential of the Nueces River that the Karankawa people, Spanish explorers, and General Zachary Taylor depended on. But as Corpus Christi began to swell in population, it became essential to find water that was fit to drink and easier to obtain. From burros pulling water barrels to the first pump house in Calallen, our potential stood unwavering. We built a dam only for it to fail months later. So we built stronger dams and cultivated new reservoirs. We feverishly negotiated for water sources, yearning for the basic resource necessary to live up to our potential. We've built, we've trenched, we've treated, we've piped, and we've piped again. We fought wars, survived depressions, droughts, hurricanes, recessions, oil booms, and busts. But we've come back quietly stronger every time. This is about the pain from the cistern, the barrel, and the well. We're not a grid of cosmopolitan lights settled by the banks of the Colorado River. We don't have natural springs that produce copious amounts of water. We're Corpus Christi. We've turned and poured every opportunity to its fullest potential, except one. Our bay is how we've sustained good times and bad, together as one. It's the core of our community and the gateway to our economic prosperity. It's what gives us grit, albeit salty grit. But it's what gives us potential for change. Change is a have-to-have ingredient we can't miss if we continue to grow. And growing is a part of who we are, the grass we play on, the homes we live in, the places where we work, the people we learn from, our families we love. Why turn our back on our potential when it's right there in front of us?
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed at least hearing and seeing what we've gone through in the past to get where we are. So I want to just go over a little bit of history of how we got here. And again, thank you for joining us. This is our third meeting. Our fourth meeting will be Wednesday, October the 14th, and encourage you to rejoin that one if you'd like, or share with a friend that date, so that if they had intended to catch the meetings and just haven't, well, they'll have one more opportunity on Wednesday. But in 2001, the state of Texas divided the state, the legislature in the state of Texas divided the state into different regions throughout the state to address the water issues that was affecting the entire state of Texas. And so they divided them into different regions, and our region is Region N. And desalination has been a strategy for addressing our water needs in South Texas on the Region N plan since 2001. This is 2020, so almost 20 years. And so we've realized we've needed water even going back to the 1980s and 90s. And so in 2013, Mayor Nelda Martinez established the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Water Committee, to begin to look at how we address additional water supplies for our region, since we're the regional water supplier for over 500,000 people. And so she established that panel, and they began their work. And in between the years 2010 and 2015, the state of Texas experienced what they now refer to as the Texas drought of record. And what that meant is that the entire state was having problems with water, and it's the worst situation that the state had been in as of the record of keeping drought information. As a matter of fact, in the year 2015, our regional water supply, which includes Lake Corpus Christi, Choke Canyon, the Lake Texana water supply, and the water that we get from the Garwood Irrigation Corporation, the combined availability of our water was down to only 29.9%. And so at that point, we really realized, I think, that we really need to start taking steps to improve and expand our water capabilities. So in 2017, the city, they started having meetings between 15 and 17 across the community. And since we have been on the council since 2017, we have had at least 17 public meetings, all of them through city council public announced meetings, dealing with this issue of desal and how we're going to accomplish our goal of getting a proper and a uninterruptible water supply for our community. Now, what some people have tried to make it look like is that this is simply for industry. Well, industry does need water, but then you and I need water to wash our clothes, brush our teeth, take showers, be able to, flush the commode, water our yards, and this sort of thing. So this water is going to be potable water. It's for everyone in the community and everyone in the region that we serve. It's not industrial water. It's not just selfishly for the citizens. And I think it's a real mistake for people to try to divide industry and the citizenry, because industry provides jobs. And I haven't had anybody that I've seen run for office that says they're not interested in creating jobs and expanding our job opportunities for our young people in our communities. And so the folks that work at industries are the same folks that you see at your church on Sundays. You see them at the Little League ballpark. You see them in football fields. You see them on the island. So you really can't separate them, and everybody needs water. And so that's what our goal is. It's going to be potable water available for everyone. And so we have been working on that, and we're in this process. And it's taken a lot of time. It's taken a lot of effort. And the staff has a lot of technical information that would be interested for you and the public to see. We're proud of the work they've done. They've done yeoman's work. They've done a lot of work. And I think when you hear the presentation, get the information, you'll be convinced, because we have an opportunity here. Groundwater and surface water are wonderful sources. That's what's gotten us here thus far. But as we continue to grow and the droughts be longer in their duration, the aquifers that are recharged through rainfall are taking longer, and the demand on aquifers is getting greater. And that's one reason you saw San Antonio divest itself of its total dependence upon the Edwards aquifer. But we're fortunate. Our location, right here in Corpus Christi, we have a bottomless pit of water right here in Corpus Christi Bay in the Gulf of Mexico. And the economies and the science has really moved forward in the last 20 to 25 years to make it a very competitive and economically a viable alternative. And that's what we want to go for, because our concerns really are threefold. One, for you, the ratepayer that ends up paying for this, we don't want any rate shock. For those of us that enjoy the environment, to go out and fishing and boating and doing whatever else we do, we don't want anything negative to happen to the environment. So we're being very sensitive to that. And so we've got a plan in place, and this is what we've been working on. And so the council continues to move forward with it. And we hope through these meetings you understand why. So I'll turn it back over to Peter and let him introduce the staff that's going to be giving you the technical information. And I think you'll be impressed with the work that they've done and the quality of that work. Because really, if you don't have water, the city dries up, and we don't want that to happen. I've got family here, you've got family here and grandchildren here, and we want Corpus Christi to be the place to be for many, many, many years to come. And if we've got an uninterruptible water supply, then Corpus Christi's greatest days are ahead of it. Peter?
Okay, great. Great, thank you, Mayor. So next you'll hear from three speakers on more information for you to help you better understand desal. We'll be talking, or they will be talking about water sources. How do we get our water today? And that'll be a real good way to start. We'll be talking about supply and then demand. And this shows you why we're at that point where we need to consider getting more water for the region. We'll spend a few minutes talking about water desalination, kind of a 101. How does it work? And what are some of the environmental responsibilities and bay sustainability design elements that we're looking at as we engineer this? And then we'll talk about the cost and rate projections as well for the plant and the impact to the customer. So our speakers this evening include Esteban. I'm just going to give you a quick bio on each one of these presenters. They'll be spending a few minutes with you in this presentation, and then they'll be helping answer your questions as they come in after the presentation. So Esteban, Steve Ramos, Jason Coughlin, and Kevin Norton. Jason is a licensed engineer with Freeze and Nichols. And for the past 6 years, Jason has been working side by side with the water utilities team. He is helping conduct important environmental impact and sustainability research and surveys of site locations and permit planning. Kevin Norton, who I introduced earlier, he is our Director of Water Utilities, and he started with the city's team about 2 years ago. Kevin oversees our largest department that has over 500 employees and an annual operating budget of $250 million. Kevin's focus is on operations, and he has been instrumental in leading his team through the Seawater Desalination project. And then Steve Estevan, also known as Estefan, or the other way around, Estefan, also known as Steve, is our city's water resource manager, and he works in the water utilities department. He has been with the city for 4 years, and he's been engaged in the seawater desalination efforts since then. Education to environmental research, to understanding the region's supply and historic water challenges, that's what Steve brings to the table. Now, after their presentation, which you'll see on your screen, it's a series of slides. Deanna McQueen, who is also here with us, she is our communications director. She will be fielding your questions to us here in this room, and we will either answer them here or we'll have Steve or Jason help us answer those questions. So again, you can contribute your questions and comments through YouTube, through Facebook, or by dialing 361-826-3234, and both English and Spanish speakers will take your questions. Just one other housekeeping thing, we have one more town hall, which will be Wednesday, the same start time, 6 o'clock to 7:15. You're welcome to join that one as well. It doesn't matter if you've already joined some last week or tonight. They're open for anybody across the region, and they're open equally each night. And then finally, we'll try to conclude around 7:15 tonight. That's what we told the community when we set up the meetings. And so we want to be mindful of everybody's schedule. Some people planned around this end time of about 7:15. And so we're going to work to conclude our meeting around 7:15. If there's some questions that aren't answered, we'll take those up first thing on our final meeting on Wednesday. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to walk you through the beginning of our presentation, talk about those points that I talked to you about momentarily.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. The city of Corpus Christi has spent decades to secure our water supply for the Coastal Bend region. As the wholesale water provider for nearly 500,000 customers, we have 4 water sources. 2 from the Nueces River Basin, Choke Canyon, and Lake Corpus Christi. 2 from the eastern region, where we contract water from Lake Texana and have water rights along the Colorado River at Bay City. These eastern water supplies flow through the Mary Roads pipeline and are delivered to our Owen Stevens water treatment plant in Calallen. Each surface water source has a unique history and special characteristics that make it possible for our region to have water. The demand of our region creates unique challenges as well. With regards to supply and demand, it starts with the understanding of what a firm yield of supply is. Our firm yield of supply is the amount of water that we can guarantee during a drought of record. Corpus Christi City Council established that when demand reaches 75% of our firm yield, a new source of water needs to be added. Within the 2022-2023 timeframe, with the new growth to the Coastal Bend, our projected demand will meet or exceed the 75% trigger point threshold of our firm yield. With the addition of a drought-proof seawater desalination plant, we reduce the risk of exceeding the 75% trigger point. Jason, can you talk a little more about what seawater desalination is?
Yes, sir. The slide that you'll see on your screen now is just an illustrative process diagram. So this isn't necessarily focused on the exact processes or configuration that may be implemented here in the coastal bend, but it is representative of a typical treatment process for seawater. Seawater desalination is a process of removing dissolved solids, which are mostly salts, from seawater. And there's a lot of treatment that has to be done before the actual desalination of the water can take place. So this may look a little bit complex, but we're really just going to focus in on a few specific areas tonight. The entire process includes two major treatment areas: pre-treatment, followed by the desalination or the removal of those salts. The pre-treatment portion of the process can look very much like a conventional surface water treatment plant, similar to the city's O.N. Stevens water treatment plant near Calallen. And that just involves coagulation, flocculation, sedimentation, and filtration. And after going through all of that pre-treatment, the seawater would then be ready for desalination by reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis, or RO, as we sometimes call it, uses membranes to extract fresh water from the seawater. You may remember learning a little bit about osmosis in school, if that sounds familiar. And it's a natural process across a membrane. It happens in our bodies all the time. And it moves in the direction of equilibrium with respect to concentrations of different things in a fluid. In order to reverse that process, because that process is moving towards equilibrium, we just apply pressure so that we can get fresh water out of the seawater. We end up with concentrate, which is the saltier water on one side of the membrane, and permeate, or fresh water, on the other side of the membrane. The four specific process streams and components I want to talk about in detail include those two, the permeate and the concentrate. The permeate is that freshwater product that comes out of the RO system. It's very, very clean. As a matter of fact, by this point in the process, it's gone through at least 4 progressive levels of filtration. And it's so clean that we have to add minerals back into it to stabilize it before it can be disinfected and then introduced into the city's drinking water distribution system. The product for all of the projects that the city is pursuing right now for seawater desal are focused on a product that is potable. So that's drinking water quality and can be put directly into the city's distribution system. When the fresh water is removed from the seawater in the RO process, what's left on the other side of the membrane with the salts and ionic balance of the bay is concentrated seawater, or concentrate. It's also very clean because it's gone through 3 of those 4 filtration processes that I mentioned. It's just very salty. So it contains the dissolved salts that were in the seawater and then concentrated when the fresh water was removed. And this process is a little less than 50% efficient, which means if you bring 100 gallons into the RO process, you really expect to recover about 45 gallons of fresh water, and you'll end up with about 55 gallons of concentrate. So it has a little bit less than 2 times the salt concentration as the seawater or the bay water that comes in. The third product from the plant that I want to mention tonight is called residuals. And this is the things that are in the seawater that are removed by the process but don't go back into the bay. So this is part of the pretreatment system. The residuals come out, and this may include silt and sediment, other suspended solids like algae. And the pretreatment process also has the benefit of being able to remove other contaminants such as heavy metals like zinc and copper. And we know that the Corpus Christi Bay as well as Nueces Bay are very sensitive when it comes to those heavy metals. So we do have the benefit of being able to remove those. And the residuals are typically dewatered through a centrifuge or another process and then disposed of at a landfill. So those are things that we take out that won't be going back into the bay. The fourth component that I'll mention just really quickly is one of the reasons that seawater desalination has become so much more feasible, cost-effective, and energy efficient in the past 20 years. And this is a process called energy recovery. There's several ways to do this. One of the ways that's seen around the world is using mechanical energy recovery systems or turbines. The other way is to use an isobaric or pressure energy recovery system. And all this allows us to do is actually regain about 95% of the energy that's in the waste stream and return that to the desalination process. So this really does provide some great efficiencies and innovation to the process that are relatively new and make the process that much more feasible. And all of this, of course, is a really big part of the conversation and our approach to environmental responsibility. Every aspect of the initiative that the city's taken on in seawater desalination is shaped by the city's commitment to stewardship. This is stewardship of our unique and amazing ecosystem that we have in the coastal bend, stewardship of local resources and finances, as well as stewardship of a sustainable and reliable water supply for the region, which the city has taken the responsibility for and stewarded for many, many decades. To approach this project as thoroughly and comprehensively as possible, we've assembled a team of experts, including multiple PhDs, environmental engineers and environmental scientists, aquatic ecologists, desalination technologists with global expertise, and other experts in power purchase agreements and procurement contracts, as well as other things. I want to go into a few of these particular aspects, especially when it comes to the city's focus on environmental responsibility. One of the keys for any seawater desalination project is the site selection. This has to be done in the right place in order to be done in the right way. The selection of project sites on the Inner Harbor Ship Channel and the La Quinta Channel began with a review of previously developed siting studies and evaluations that date back nearly 20 years. After that, we worked with experts from across the region to define and prioritize the screening and evaluation criteria that you see here on the slide. The siting work was a significant and collaborative effort involving local and regional stakeholders, as well as state and federal resource agencies. After the initial identification of potential sites, which was about 19 sites across the coastal bend, we screened those sites, which resulted in 4 candidate sites. On those 4 sites, we applied the evaluation criteria and did a very thorough and detailed evaluation. The project team also mapped ecosystems across the region, like seagrasses and sensitive species like oysters, piping plovers, and others. The siting process objective was to find an optimal balance with all of the evaluation criteria, but environmental sustainability is the cornerstone of the selection and one of the non-negotiable criteria. Based on the established criteria, the 2 project sites were selected and permit applications for the water rights and the discharges were filed with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. A major part of this site selection was shaped by intake considerations. While there are countless considerations to address for seawater intake, we're planning to use the best available technology that can be applied to the city's projects, considering our local geotechnical conditions and geography. This includes very small openings at the inlets where the seawater comes in. The openings will just be 2 to 3 millimeters wide. So to put this in perspective, if you stack 2 pennies on top of each other, that stack is 3 millimeters tall. So the water will be coming in through these inlets and they're just 2 to 3 millimeters wide. We also require the design to ensure very low velocities through those openings. The water will move at about half a foot per second, which is about 10 times slower than your average walking pace. So not only do we have very, very narrow openings where the water comes in, the water moves through those openings very slowly. And this is considered around the world best available technology for a seawater intake. As a matter of fact, this exceeds all regulatory requirements on a seawater intake for a desalination plant. Another key element for the intake is the installation depth. Seagrasses grow in less than 7 feet of water because that's where they can get enough sunlight. And the intake can provide very good, consistent water quality at a depth of about 20 feet to ensure that it remains away from seagrasses. In addition to the intake, the outfall requires some serious consideration and review. The outfall is another component for which the city is going above and beyond to exceed regulatory requirements and to make sure we're stewarding and considering our ecosystem resources. What you see on the slide is another illustrative figure that's indicative of a jet diffusion process for the seawater desal concentrate to be reintroduced into the bay. This is a process that uses energy in the form of velocity to mix the concentrate with the receiving water to meet diffusion criteria close to the outfall in 3 defined mixing zones. And what this means is at 3 locations, different radii from the outfall location, the plant will be required to meet certain salinity targets according to the discharge permit. One of the key pieces of documentation used in the evaluation of considerations for both seawater intakes and outfalls is a 2015 report by the Hart Research Institute that looks at ideal conditions and technologies for seawater desalination intakes and outfalls. Each of these components play into a much bigger approach to ensure bay sustainability. Our team and the city's team is working very hard to understand the dynamics of our bays and estuaries. Our inshore system is unique, diverse, and very dynamic. It's bounded by barrier islands, but it's not stagnant or closed. And based on median freshwater inflows from our rivers and streams, a Texas Water Development Board study concluded that the entire volume of the bay is exchanged in about 1.4 years. And that's just based on freshwater inflows. So when we consider that, we think about all 282 billion gallons, that's billion with a B, of water in the bay being replenished with fresh water in about 17 months. And there are many other variables in the bay as well, like evaporation, precipitation, stormwater, tidal exchange with the Gulf of Mexico, and then the municipal and industrial discharges. So all of these contribute to the dynamics of our inshore environment. The TCEQ has been proactive enough to install surface water quality monitoring stations throughout the coastal bend. Many of these stations have been in place for decades. As a matter of fact, we've had the benefit of looking back about 40 years for water quality data and salinity in the bays. The natural salinity that we see in our bays and estuaries range from about 25 to 42 parts per thousand, which is a natural variation of about 17 parts per thousand. And if I remember right, I believe those are 5th percentile and 95th percentile. This shows that our bay and local marine species are resilient and have adapted to these changing salinity conditions. Again, our inshore environment here is very unique and very dynamic. We perform salinity modeling, which is done with computer simulations. And these simulations predict how the salt from the seawater desal plant will diffuse near the outfall and what changes can be expected far from the outfall. Our team is currently using 3 computer models or simulations to best understand the dynamics of the bay and how a seawater desalination plant can be implemented sustainably. The city again went a step above and beyond basic permitting requirements to make sure to capture real data on how the water moves near the plant outfalls and how we can best model the concentrate dispersion. 2 instruments were installed, one at each of the proposed outfall locations, to collect channel velocity data over a 6-month time frame. That data is being used to make sure that the models are as accurate as possible. Each of these commitments are necessary guidelines that the city has implemented as part of our continued due diligence for seawater desalination. I'll ask Mr. Ramos again to define the project's due diligence.
Thank you, Jason. The project due diligence of $11.4 million allows the city to establish our project cornerstone. And with the preliminary basis of design, as well as the request for qualifications and the development of the request for proposal, we mitigate risk from several perspectives. This includes vetting the expertise and background of our respondents, as well as understanding and ensuring the critical financial stability of potential contractors. When the time comes for actual design and building of a seawater desalination plant, the city will look to the private sector for qualified companies to do the work. It will be our private partners that complete the architecture and construction, not Freeze and Nichols and not the city. Kevin, can you talk to us more about the project's cost and how it will impact ratepayers?
Yes, thank you, Esteban. The city is pre-approved for up to a $222 million low-interest 30-year loan from the Texas Water Development Board. This is comprised of the $11 million noted on the previous slide and the $211 million that's noted here. This $222 million amount is a maximum from the Texas Water Development Board, and it gives the city the flexibility to enter a multi-year approach. We're reserving up to $211 million of the loan for future construction, and as Esteban previously noted, we are starting with an $11.4 million amount to continue with our due diligence and securing permits and property, and also refining the basis of design and ultimately reducing as much risk as possible before the actual acquisition process begins for this project. You can think of this like a home purchase. The Texas Water Development Board has pre-approved the city for a seawater desalination plant up to $222 million. In this case, the $11.4 million on the previous slide serves as our escrow money, allowing the city the opportunity for environmental permitting, surveys, power purchase agreements, and preliminary design work to reduce risk by following our due diligence. And like a home loan, even though the city's been pre-approved for the full $222 million, it does not mean we will exhaust the $222 million we are approved for. There are operators in the Water Utilities Department, and what that means is that we look for functionality and reliability in treatment operations and will only use what is needed for construction. As it relates to seawater desalination, an average residential water customer, such as a family like mine, who uses 5,000 gallons of water each month, could expect to see an average increase of 77 cents per month on their monthly utilities bill for water charges. And again, this is only if construction of a seawater desalination plant is approved. Our city's rate model is used for budget forecasting and can project out to 10 years. The city's practice is to adjust utility rates every 2 years. So in another 2 years, during the city's normal rate adjustment, an average increase of 77 cents per month could be anticipated again. You can think about this if it's easier. It's about 38 cents per month every year as an increase. And so again, this rate projection is once every 2 years over the course of a 10-year period, which is as far as we can forecast rate adjustments. And as our mayor said, public input on this project has been important since the beginning. We continue to work hard to make sure our community is informed and empowered with facts. We hope you'll visit us online at desal.cctexas.com or join the conversation on any of the social media channels. You can always reach us via phone and email too. On behalf of the staff you see here tonight, and on behalf of our city staff behind the scenes, thank you for taking the time to join us. And with that, Deanna, we can move to Q&A.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So the first question comes from Facebook. Why would the city turn down offers from companies offering to build the desal plants and sell us water at no cost to the city?
That's a great question. And I think there's a real big misunderstanding as a premise for that question. The premise is they're going to provide it to the citizens of Corpus Christi at no cost. That is a false premise. Any additional water supply we have, whether it be groundwater, surface water, or desal water, is going to cost the ratepayer who uses the product. So whether if we buy groundwater or we buy surface water or we do desal, the ratepayer ultimately who buys the product is the one that pays the bill. These private sector folks, and I have nothing against them because we may get into a P3 at some point in the process, but they do it for a profit or they wouldn't be doing it at all. And so you're going to pay the price. It's either you need to understand that. And it's very difficult. And if rates are one of our main concerns, the private sector would have to go out and borrow money unless they just had their own private money to invest. And I would think they'd want some type of return. I mean, the loan that we're getting now is a 1.99% interest rate. Private sector cannot get that. They might be able to get 2, 2.5, or 3, but I don't believe they can get a 1.99%. And so at some point, when we sign a contract with that third party out there, and some people are trying to make you believe as the public that there's people out there willing to do this and provide water for us for the next 30 years at no cost. That's just a false basis for their presentation. Fact of the matter is, when you sign that contract, it says, okay, you provide me water and all I have to do is turn on the spigot. When you sign that contract, it's a take or pay contract. So for the next 30 years, you're going to be paying that rate, whether you take the water or not, because they've got to get a return on their investment for the cost of building and providing you that water. And so we're looking at it from the most economical standpoint. And many of those that are providing water from aquifers, while they may have a 100-year, a 200-year, or a 500-year supply, they are regulated by the amount of water they can pump each year. And so if they can only pump 20,000 or 25,000 gallons a day, or however they measure it in acre feet or gallons, they're limited to that. And so if we go into a drought and that aquifer begins to fall, they'll start regulating the amount of pumping that you can take out. You have a bottomless supply of water in the ocean. And so if we don't clear up anything else, you need to understand that those that are making proposals out there, they're great people. They want to help the community, but they're not going to do it for free. And anyone that tells you it's going to be for free, they're not telling you the straight truth. So at some point, you and I are going to have to pay either through the process that we're using, or if we sign with a third party that out there that's promoting this, it's just a matter of how much we're going to pay. So I hope that solves that question. But the reason we're pursuing this is, one, it's economically feasible, it's uninterruptible, and it's affordable, but based on technology and our capability and capacity.
All right. This next question is from a caller. What will be the new water rates for industry when desalination is in service?
Kevin, do you want to try to answer that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, so for the industries, so again, the city's practice is to adjust rates every 2 years, and that includes for the industries and for all customers. We have not determined what that is going to be yet at that time. It's really dependent when we get into construction and when the plant is in operation. And then at that point, before then, that's when we're going to be looking at trying to determine what the industry rate is going to be. So sorry, I don't have a better answer, but that's a little too far out in the future for us right now at this minute in time.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. This is from a caller. Can you create a comparison graph or chart showing industry rates versus residential rates?
We actually have on the city's website, it's not a chart, but it's a table that lists all of the rates for residential customers, industrial customers, inside city limits customers, and outside city limits customers. So that's at cctexas.com. And if you go to the water page, there's a link there to the rates. I believe you can also get there through the Utility Business Office website on the cctexas.com city website.
So that's a good point, Kevin, just to highlight that. So it's always been on our website, the water rates, Kevin, right?
Yes, sir.
cctexas.com is our main website, and then go to the water utilities section, if you will, Kevin, right? That's where they can find that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, Deanna, thank you.
Yes, this is from a council member. How will the city honor its agreement with the EPA court ruling involving sewage overflows to pay for more than $700 million worth of improvements to our wastewater system in the next 15 years if we also commit to the $222.5 million loan the city is seeking from the State Water Board for a desal plant?
Yeah, well, yeah, we can all kind of answer that. So we have to do both. We're the city. We're doing multiple things at one time, and we're forecasting and we're budgeting, and we feel confident we can do both. And you can add distribution to that cost as well. So we have water supply. That's what we're talking about tonight. Water supplies. And then we have water distribution, so making sure we have a good piping system, pumps, and a good treatment plant up there in Owen Stephen. And then we have wastewater. And all those three really make up our water, wastewater utility. And we do financial forecasting and budgeting. We do 10-year projections. We wouldn't be here tonight if we didn't think we could do this. And so we know we can do it, and we can do it where the rates to the customer are reasonable. We're not here to rate shock any customer. We're mindful of the customer's financial situation. I know the mayor and council certainly are, and we are as well as professionals here in the business at City. So we can do both. We have to do both, and that's what makes us a vibrant city, and it will make us one for many years to come. I don't know if you want to add to that, Mayor or Kevin.
Yes, sir. Mayor, did you want?
No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So just a couple of things with it, but for the wastewater system, that's a separate enterprise fund, and the water is its own enterprise fund too. So they're completely separate and independent funds that are operated as independent business models there. And like, the mayor had mentioned before, and the city manager as well, when we're looking at seawater desalination, it is quite affordable. One thing that I did not mention when I was talking about the rate projections, again, that 77 cents per month for a family like mine that uses 5,000 gallons a month, 77 cents per month every 2 years, that was actually fairly conservative amount too. So that assumes that we use the entire $222 million loan. So the debt service goes into the rate model for that. That also assumes, the mayor mentioned that our loan right now, it's 1.99%. It assumes that we have a 3% loan, so a higher interest rate. And it also assumes that we're, paying more for electricity. And again, that hasn't been determined, but we think we could get a cheaper value for the electricity for the plant. So again, fairly conservative assumptions that go into what our rate projection is for the residential customers there. And again, wastewater fund, it's separate than the water fund.
All right, this next question is from Facebook. Being that the discharge areas for both the La Quinta and Harbor Island sites are not within the areas described as appropriate discharge locations, as per the studies completed by Texas Parks and Wildlife and the Texas General Land Office, has the city had any consultation with either department regarding the selection of the discharge areas? If so, what was their response?
Yeah, let's have Jason and Esteban answer that question.
Yes, sir. We have met with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, GLO, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and other organizations. I would like to clarify just really quickly that the city's projects are located on the Inner Harbor Ship Channel and the La Quinta Channel. The Harbor Island project is not the city's project. But the question is correct that those organizations identified some locations for expedited permitting activities, and those would be offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. So the permits that we've applied for inshore at the locations on the Inner Harbor Ship Channel and the La Quinta Channel have to go through a typical permitting process for discharge, which includes all of the scrutiny from environmental scientists at the state level and the resource agencies. And that's the process that the city's permits will go through. Now, in meetings with these agencies, obviously they can't give you a thumbs up or thumbs down on your location, but I will say that the permit applications are available for review by all of these agencies. These agencies do get to comment on the locations and the feasibility and sustainability of the permit applications. And then ultimately, it's up to the city to be able to show that those permits are going to be sustainable. Steve, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just shortly, and at the beginning of this whole project, we did meet with Texas Parks and Wildlife and TCEQ. We visited them. We sat down, we talked about the project, how it would be done, what was the permitting. So we wanted to do above and beyond what is required for us in the permitting process. And that was going out and talking to them, making sure that we could have answers for their questions. And that just shows the commitment that the city has to do the right environmental studies and the right process for this application.
All right, thanks, Steve. From Facebook, since both desalination plants are located closer to the citizens of Port Aransas, Ingleside on the Bay, Aransas Pass, and Portland than Corpus Christi residents, what has been done to ensure that their quality of life has been represented?
Yeah, Jason, can you address that one as well?
Yes, sir.
The site selection process evaluation that you all did.
Yes, sir. And I do think maybe there's still some confusion on the sites. The site on the La Quinta Channel that the city is permitting, the question is correct. That's close to Ingleside, Portland, Ingleside on the Bay, that area. But the site that the city is permitting on the Inner Harbor is in Nueces County in the city of Corpus Christi. So I'll start there. The question, though, is a good one about how the quality of life is protected for all of us who live across the coastal bend. I mean, I live here in Corpus Christi, and if I have some free time, I'm definitely on the water. It's my favorite thing about being down here. So I will say that, you know, the scrutiny and the public process that all of these permits go through, and the permits are available for review through TCEQ. The permits are open for public comment, and we would encourage that. We'll also likely have public information meetings through TCEQ on the permit applications. And that's the opportunity to engage with these permits to make sure that your individual and our regional greater good is being considered. We want this to be something that benefits not only the individual and all of the cities and the water customers across the region, but also the ecosystem.
And just to quickly add again to that comment, the city has met with multiple representatives from that side of the bay. We've talked to our partners with the San Pat Municipal Water District. Through them, they also have communicated the project's due diligence to their customers. So in all, we wanted to make this project, again, it is a project for the region, for the whole entire coastal bend, and we continue to work and communicate with our partners across the 7 counties. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. From Facebook, what will the city tell neighboring county residents if something were to negatively impact the health of their estuaries due to the desal plants?
Jason, do you want to address that one again?
I can, although we got a similar question last Thursday, and the mayor did an excellent job responding to it. You know, there's over 16,000 seawater desal plants in the world.
Yeah.
Technology is very well understood. The impacts and how it interacts with the local environment is very well understood. So I would say that there is a very low risk of the types of impacts that the question is alluding to. And there are measures that will be in place to make sure that those impacts don't happen. For instance, monitoring at the outfall to make sure that dissolved oxygen and salinity levels are within permit limits. Like I mentioned, that the TCEQ surface water quality monitoring stations have been monitoring salinity and water quality in the bays for over 40 years. So that gives a great baseline to be able to track potential changes and impacts to the bay. But I guess all that said, if the mayor would like to add a little bit to that, I think he did a great job responding to the question last week. But there is no expectation that there would be that level of impact.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as we stated, that, you know, the two drivers of this is, one, we did not want a negative impact on our rate structure, and two was on our bays and estuaries, because, I mean, we all love to fish and get out in our boats, and we've been over backwards to try to make sure that that is a safe project that we get on. And I think the volumes that Jason talked about, and just the minuscule impact relative to the size of the bay in terms of the discharge, are well within the parameter there of the variance of 17. I think you call it 17 parts per million, if I recall. It varies in the bay depending on the rainfall or the drought or the inflow and the outflow of the tides. And so the projected impact of the brine, which is the concentrate, and once it's used through those diffusers, I mean, is less than, and correct me, Jason, I think it's less than 1% out of a 17% variance. So if I'm mistaken on that number, but
0.3, sir.
0.3, not even one, just 0.3.
0.3 parts per thousand.
Per thousand. So it's we're very sensitive to it, and I think people ought to take a lot of pride in that we've made that kind of commitment. One, to provide the water, and we worked with San Patricio Municipal Water District and the folks over there, because we're concerned for everybody that's our customer. It's not just the citizens of Corpus Christi. Anybody we provide water for, we're concerned that we've got it. And we have a superior water rating now, and we have no intention of letting that get away from us.
All right, thank you, Mayor. From Facebook, what will the city tell neighboring county residents if something were to negatively impact the health? Oh, I just read that one. I apologize, guys. This thing moved on me. My fault. Let's try it again. From Facebook, what will this do to the tourism industries in these neighboring communities if the fish were to leave the areas? I read this one too. All right. Let's see what's going on here. All right. From Facebook, why has the city not taken a less risky approach in including piping to discharge the waste from few miles offshore in the Gulf of Mexico?
So I'm going to have Jason answer that, but generally the city through Freeze and Nichols spent many months looking at various locations for intake and discharge, and there's several factors that were considered, and so it's a balance act. It's a balancing act, one of cost, one of environment, one of proximity to electricity, proximity to customers. So the sites that we have for the two proposed plants best balances all those competing concerns. That's kind of the broad answer. But Jason, do you want to see if there's anything more specifics on that one?
I think that's very well stated, sir. The balance in question, and the one non-negotiable criteria that we selected was the final considerations. And there's a lot of certainty that going offshore for intake and the outfall would be absolutely the ideal. But like you said, you need to balance that with all of the other criteria that we talked about. And so, we haven't done detailed cost estimations, but we did kind of a high level ballpark, and it would add about $100 million to the project cost to take just the outfall offshore. The outfall is the one that we would prioritize. And again, that's a slightly smaller volume than the intake. So that would be the one that we estimated to go offshore with. And then the question became, if we could do the outfall sustainably inshore and reduce the project cost by $100 million, and that's just an order of magnitude, then that would be the appropriate balance of all those parameters. There's question about also developing the supply in a location where the demand is highest. That helps to reduce project cost. That also helps to reduce environmental impact. If we're not running pipelines all over our seagrasses in, say, the Laguna Madre or Redfish Bay to the north. So that was considered as well. It's very multifaceted approach that we took to siting. That was certainly a part of it. We did look at locations on Mustang Island and Padre Island that would have outfall and intake in the Gulf. And we know that could be done sustainably. But the balance is our modeling shows that it can be done sustainably inshore. And that allows for the balance to swing to the economics, the technical feasibility, and then also being closer to the demand centers.
All right, this is from a caller. Have the conducted studies been submitted to external peer reviews and the audit department? How can citizens be assured it's objective and completely unbiased study?
Jason, let me just say first, so Freeze and Nick, so the city is doing analysis from our team, and Freeze and Nichols, who has really no reason to pick one choice over another, is working for the city as an independent professional organization. And so that's one check already. But Jason, do you want to talk about some of the others that we have in place?
Yes, sir. And as part of the data collection that we've done to inform the modeling, and a computer model is only as good as the inputs that you've got to set it up. So the 6 months of water quality or water velocity information that we got in the two channels was through a partnership with the Texas Water Development Board. And so that data right now is actually being processed for the final model that's going to be submitted to TCEQ. TCEQ has a group that's focused on what's called anti-degradation. It's a group that has a pretty broad net that they can cast in consideration of permit applications to make sure that those applications, discharges, whatever it may be, will not degrade the environment, will not degrade quality of life. And so the final modeling will actually go to TCEQ. That will be public information posted as part of the final permit application. And I believe be available before we have a public information meeting. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Steve? So there will be an opportunity for the world to take a look at those studies and make sure that they're properly vetted. Now, obviously, we do a lot of internal quality assurance and quality control on those things. We have a great team of environmental scientists and aquatic ecologists. We have 2 PhD modelers who are working on the concentrate diffusion modeling. So there's a lot of expertise behind this, but I think the question raises a very important point, that this needs to be understood not just by the team, but also vetted with outside sources. And that opportunity will come when the final modeling reports and studies are provided to the state.
And that's always been the plan. And we have to also think at the very beginning when Freese & Nichols was selected, they brought in the expertise and the knowledge to lead this project with those exact scientists, those environmental scientists and biologists, and one of the leading experts in the world on desalination, Nikolai, that could lead us, the city of Corpus Christi and the region, to make sure that we do this project correctly. Thank you.
I wanted to add also that there have been, through the Freese & Nichols efforts, a number of studies that have been completed. Hart Research Institute with Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and those studies, a lot of really, really good information has come out of them. A lot of good recommendations have come out of it, and that has informed the site selection. That has informed where we're at right now. So, the work that's been done by other studies has been incorporated into where we are at right now. And Jason mentioned TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They have a lot of experience, and they got a lot of expertise as well. And so they don't just accept what we're giving to them either. It's an ongoing dialogue. They call us out on things. They have us answer questions. We do that all the time on many, many different things. And again, like Esteban was talking about too with Freese & Nichols, there is a lot of expertise on that team. And Nikolai Vuchkov, who Esteban mentioned, he's written at least four books that I'm aware of on seawater desalination. And it has to do with, designing the projects, with the concentrate and with the intakes. He's also written a number of operations manuals for the American Water Works Association. He's a world-renowned expert, and he's on our side with this. And he's got a lot of skin in the game too, because this is his reputation. But he's a world-renowned expert that we have on the team, in addition to the others that are as part of the Freese & Nichols team.
All right, thanks, Kevin. This is from a caller. Why are no city council members taking part in these meetings?
Well, they are. So city council members are watching. They have been. This is our third meeting, and some have participated in meeting 1 and 2, and some may be participating this evening. This is a citywide issue, a region-wide issue, and the mayor, who chairs the city council meetings and is a unique position amongst the city council, is probably the best person to represent the full city council in tonight's meeting. This is really an informational session and a way to get dialogue. The council's fully aware. In fact, they asked for more town halls, and the staff responded by adding 1 additional. And we did it actually, and 1 more on top of that, by doing a talk show on radio last week. So the council's engaged, they're involved, and they can participate. We had a council member here the first night, in fact, kind of seeing how things were going, listening. And so the answer is they're involved.
All right, this question's from Facebook. Does the city have permits to build desal plants near the ship harbor area?
The ship channel, we do, but we don't have. We're pursuing permits. As we said, the inner harbor is one of our permitted sites that we're in the process of trying to obtain permits for. So the answer would be yes on that one. In terms of pursuing, we don't have permits, but we're pursuing them.
All right, here's a question from Facebook. What is going to happen when the salinity levels increase in the bay and the state releases water from Choke Canyon?
I saw that question. Esteban, I'm not sure if the state releases water from Choke Canyon, but can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Pursuant to our agreed order for surface water rights, we're required to make releases based on flows that come into the system. The seawater desalination plant would not have an effect on those releases, which in benefit for a seawater desalination plant could bring is a potential to meet our requirements even more based upon the inflows and based upon that the city is using another water source. So the seawater desalination project could have a benefit to our releases.
I just wanted to add a little bit too, because Jason had spoken about this as well. But again, the water that is going to be discharged from the seawater desalination plant, it's a little bit saltier, but using the jet diffusion to decrease the salinity amount, the volume, the concentrate there to 0.3 parts per thousand. But a lot of the contaminants that are in the raw water that you're pulling out of the bay, the organics, any heavy metals, that kind of thing, that gets pulled out during the desalination process, the pretreatment process, and that's collected and it goes to the landfill. So the water that's actually going back in, and Jason had mentioned this, it's actually a lot cleaner water than what you're pulling out of the bay. So it does improve, if you're looking at it that way, it does improve the water quality of the bay.
All right, this is from a caller. Why are industrial water rates not being disclosed? If they are, what are they?
Yeah, no, that's an inaccurate statement that they're not being disclosed. In fact, as Kevin said earlier, they're on our website. We have the water rates that we have for the various customers that we do have. Excuse me, and they've probably been on there for many years.
Was there? Sure.
They've been there for, probably since we had the web page. So we list the water rates for the residential customer, inside city limits, outside city limits. There's commercial, industrial, all the water rates are there. So if somebody wants to see them, go to the city's website at cctexas.com and then look for the water utilities department, and the rates are listed there. So just going to our website. Thank you, Deanna.
Yes, sir. Here's a question from Facebook. Why would the city turn down offers from companies offering to build the desal plants and sell us water at no cost to the city?
Well, that's a good question. It's based on a false premise that they're going to provide water at no cost to the city. If they are willing to do that, we'll talk. But they've got investors. They've got to make a return on their investments. Nobody in those 10 people that came and made a presentation to us the other day said, we want to provide you water at no cost. Not one of them. They all had their costs. Some said, this is your cost if you just buy the water in the ground. Then you got to pay extra to get it out. And then you got to pay extra to get it to some location. Then you got to pay extra to treat it. And then you take it there. Or we could get it to your pipeline, but you're going to have to treat it before you get into the pipeline. They gave us a 500-piece puzzle and gave us 475 pieces. No one is going to provide an additional water supply to us for free. And anybody that's trying to tell you that, they're just blowing smoke. And I'm sorry that the public is being given that perception by some of the promoters. Most of them are very decent, and I think they're in it for a business. But they cannot compete from the technical standpoint at this point for what we're trying to do. We may move forward to where we get to a P3, which is we contract. I think the course we're on is, and has been stated, Freeze and Nichols is not going to design the plant. The city's not going to design it. We will go out to the private sector to get somebody to design it, and we'll get the private sector to build it. And there's probably a real good chance that we'd get somebody to operate it for a period of time, so that everything is working and we ever understand it at some point. But when you take, if we signed a contract with, under the terms the questioner asked, we'll just provide all of this for you at no cost. Well, that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is you sign a contract, so they go out and spend all of this money for the next 30 or 40 years to provide you water at a cost. They're going to sell it to us on a take or pay basis. That means whether we take any of that water or we take all of that water, we're going to pay the same every month for 30 years. And I don't know, that I didn't see in those contract proposals, it would all be negotiated, but you don't know what the cost of chemical treatment is. You don't know what the cost of electricity is and all these things in the years ahead. So at some point, the rate they quote today is not going to be the same. It's going to be adjusted sometime in that contract. And that's what Kevin was saying, that we project out about 8 or 10 years in anticipation of what the rates may be and the tweaking of them. But you're not going to get somebody to sign a contract without some provision that over the life of that contract, it's going to be X number of dollars. And then if you throw in the cost of borrowing money, you can go figure this yourself. You take the amount of money and you put in a 1.99% interest rate and a 2.5% or 3% interest rate over a 30-year period, you're going to be paying substantially more at the end of the 30 years than you are doing it the way we're doing it now. So first of all, please be not deceived by somebody making the statement that they're willing to provide it to you free. That is just a false premise. And anyone that tells you that, you just need to terminate the conversation right then. I mean, it's pretty simple. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
All right, thank you, Mayor. From Facebook, are there guarantees that there will be no negative environmental impacts?
Yeah, Jason can probably answer that as our environmental engineer. But go ahead, Jason.
Yes, so I'd say that there are never any guarantees. However, our job is to do the work to answer the questions that pose risk. So from the very beginning, as a matter of fact, one of the most innovative and elegant parts of this project is that 5 years ago, the city decided to take responsibility for what the city is good at, and then push responsibility onto the private sector, like the mayor mentioned, for the things that the private sector is good at. So one of the things that the city is good at is understanding the local water supply, the local water demand projections, the local environment, determining the state of Texas and these other things. So the approach that was taken very early on was that we would answer all of these questions because unknowns are basically risk. And that includes financial risk and environmental risk. So the environmental harm, there's no guarantees, right? But our work that we've been doing for about 6 years now is to lead to a point of a decision to build a desal plant where you have answered everything that you can to help mitigate that risk. And what we've seen around the world, and I mentioned 16,000 plus seawater desalination plants around the world, if there was ecological disaster after ecological disaster, this wouldn't be something that humans continue to rely on and increasingly rely on for water supply. Now, there are other higher cost options, but this is a great balance of mitigating that risk, like I mentioned, can be done very, very sustainably in an energy efficient way and also be cost effective.
And it goes early into this project where we did the siting correctly, and we wanted to work with our groups from around the community, getting the outreach component and working with these experts that were brought into this project so we can mitigate those risks. I know we sound like a broken record and we keep on saying the same points over and over, but those are the important points of this project, to make sure that we have mitigated those potential risks and lowering what could be the effect, and working with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and making sure that monitoring will be there. We have the proper personnel and staff to work on a project like this. You know, this whole project wasn't done overnight. It was the hard work, like Jason said, over 6 years going into working what can be a feasible, reliable, sustainable project.
All right, thank you both. From Facebook, with illegal dumping happening in our bay and red tide, how do we know the desalinized water would be safe to drink?
Jason, want to answer that? Jason or Steve?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate the question because there is some sensitivity around that. And I assure you, I've recently been through the process with TCEQ to get a new water supply approved for drinking water use. It's not an easy thing. So another area where the city and our team have really tried to answer a lot of questions, resolve all the unknowns, is that we just completed 1 year of water quality sampling in the locations of the 2 proposed intakes so that we could get an idea of seasonal variations, salinity variations, water quality variations across a year. Now, we didn't capture a harmful algal bloom like red tide that was mentioned, although there's contingencies and monitoring that goes specifically towards harmful algal blooms to make sure that the process can handle that. But the city's AA club operators are absolutely the top of their field in Texas. The city's water lab does an incredible job on assessing water quality, and the state requirements to make sure that the water that leaves the plant is safe and can be blended into the existing distribution system are very, very stringent. So the state and the city take this responsibility of providing potable water very seriously. And there are a lot of systems in place, both automatic systems and checks and balances on the raw water side coming into the plant, like I mentioned, with harmful algal blooms and other potential things that are going to be in the water. But then also on the produced water side for the potable water itself.
Exactly. We have a superior rating. There's the number one thing we also look at is making sure that we're not going to degrade that award from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We want to make sure that anything that we do protects and assures the drinking water quality for our coastal bend.
Jason mentioned the AA club. So what that is, TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they license all of our operators and our staff. It's a pretty rigorous process to get up there. A is the best license you can get. And so they have it on the wastewater side and on the water side. And so if you have an A license in wastewater and an A license in water, you're part of the AA club. So we have 3 on our staff: the Assistant Director of Water Quality and Water Treatment, our Water Quality Manager, and our Water Treatment Plant Manager. All 3 of them are part of the AA club. And there's across the state of Texas, there's only about 180 people that are part of that club out of all the operators in Texas. And out of the thousands of public water systems that are in the state of Texas. So that's pretty, these people know what they're doing. And in terms of the treatment plant operators, 10 of the 12 who work full-time as treatment plant operators, they have A licenses. And the other 2, they're up and coming. So very, very well qualified staff. We have licensed staff. The water quality lab was mentioned as well. It's NELAP certified. I forget what that stands for, but that's a rigorous program. They get looked at every 2 years. Throughout the city's distribution system, we have 98 water quality sample sites. And so that's how we ensure that water quality, again, we have over 1,700 miles of distribution system. And so to maintain the water quality, we send the team out to look at these 98 different sites on a regular basis to make sure that our water quality is exceptional. So, people are kind of concerned, I guess, if how do you ensure it's safe to drink? We do that now with what we got with the surface water sources that Esteban had talked about at the very beginning of this presentation. So we're doing that now. When we get another water supply coming in, we're going to keep on doing the same thing. And as the distribution system grows, there's going to be added water quality sample sites to look at it, more distribution system that you have when we get there as the city continues to grow.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm sending it back to Peter.
Okay, great. Well, we want to thank everybody that's still on Facebook and YouTube and our public access channel for joining us tonight for what has been our 3rd town hall meeting to help explain to the community and get your questions answered. Seawater desalinization We had a good crowd tonight, and we're appreciative of the questions. We have one more meeting scheduled then for Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday, October 14th, and it's open to anybody in the region. If you've already been on one of these town halls, that doesn't matter. You can join again if you'd like to. And it'll be the same start time, 6 o'clock to 7:15. In the meantime, if you want more information on desal, if you want to look at some of our materials, look at our rates, watch that video again that we saw at the beginning of the movie, you can go to our website and you can type in desal.cctexas.com. That'll take you directly there rather than going through the city's main website. So desal.cctexas.com. We look forward to hearing more from the community, and public engagement is one of our cornerstone principles that the mayor and council adhere to and follow. And so we were glad to be with you tonight, and we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you later. Thank you.